Thank you, Doug.
Oh, gosh.
Here it is.
All right, welcome everybody to our postponed, rescheduled town council meeting. Call this meeting to order, and I would like to say on behalf of myself, Mayor Charlie Sellers, and the council, I think they're probably all in agreement that our Public Works Department, Parks and Rec, Police Department, Fire Department went way above and beyond the call of duty. They worked many hours, and thank you so much. And the council stayed on top of everything, and I think it went great. And the snowfall, what was the last one, Albert? 1923?
1823.
But
I visited you in the hospital that year.
that's when I was born. But thank you so much to everybody with the town administration. Did not come into the offices, but they worked. And so, I mean, it was a group effort, so thanks so much. Moving on, do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
I make a motion to adopt the agenda with request to move the 2019 cycle North Carolina off of the consent agenda to new business. I just had some questions.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Agenda's adopted. Now, do we have a motion to approve the minutes from November 5th, 2018 special meeting?
So made.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. Approval of minutes, November 13th, 2018. Do we have a motion? Jim?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of minutes, November 13th, 2018 closed session. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
And finally, November 19th, 2018 special meeting. Do we have a motion to approve?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving forward. Ladies and gentlemen, right now, as it stands, the speakers from the floor, we request that they do not speak of something that is on the agenda or if there's something in the public hearing aspects. If you would like to speak on something not on the agenda, please go to Hillary, fill out your name and your address, and the allotted time is 3 minutes, and we'd be more than happy to listen to your positive notes, concerns, or whatever. All right. Moving on, we're at the consent agenda. Mr. Freeman, would you like to address that? We do have one thing that's been moved to the new business, and that's the 2019 cycle North Carolina. Other than that, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda passes. Moving forward, I think we have, this is on the Sunset Drive project. I think we have Doug McGill here to give us a presentation, don't we, Mr. Freeman?
Yes, and if it's all right, I'll open up the presentation. The format will be, I'll open it up. We have some additional information that Nicole would like to present in terms of your July 10th meeting, your budget that you were talking about at that time, and then Doug will take over and go ahead and present the Sunset Boulevard utilities. And then at the end of that presentation, we'll open to council for questions, concerns, and we're just looking for direction in regards to either go with the conduit or not go with the conduit, because the bids are ready to go, and if we're ready to go with it, we can incorporate that in there. So with that, I'll go ahead, and this is a new thing for me. I didn't realize that we direct the computer and the presentation and do the presentation talking about everybody else. Anyway, I think what we have up here, you saw that we just wanted to recap for your information, because we talked to a few council members just the other day and yesterday, just kind of recap where we were. We thought we had an understanding in regards to moving forward with this project. So I thought it might be best to just to recap that on July 10th, this project was presented. A budget to it was also presented, as you can see here, and she'll talk a little bit about it. And I believe the minutes at that time was to move forward with the project, and we knew that there was a little bit of concern with the financing. As you can see here, there's a little bit of a dilemma there, but it was directed in the minutes, if you look at that, for the manager and the engineer to get together and work that out, which was not a problem. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to explain the numbers that came up at that meeting as a recap.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm just going to go over with you an overview that I put together on the financial aspects of the streetscape project funding and the needs that are projected based on the July estimates that were prepared by the town's engineer. So the first page deals with the streetscape portion of the project, which is the portion that affects the general capital fund. And then to follow that, the second page, or the second slide we'll go over, is going to deal with the water sewer side of the project, which falls in the water sewer capital projects portion of the town's budget. So you can see here, funds on hand in the general capital project total $1,157,915, which actually includes the third issuance of the bond, as we had planned on using some proceeds from the third issuance, which has not transpired yet. That will happen in April of 2019, to put additional funding towards this project. So based on the estimate for the project, there's approximately $248,000 left in funding to find for the general fund streetscape portion of the project. So this is just based on estimates. We won't really know, how much is needed or if any is needed until actual bids are received on the project. So this is just sort of preparing and sort of getting everybody thinking about it. When the actual bids come in, we could need a little more than this, we could need a little less, or it could be possible we don't need any additional funding. So we'll have to wait and see on that, but this is just based on the estimates that the engineers have prepared. So once the bids come in on the project, we will also be bringing to council a project ordinance for council consideration that will show a funding source, proposed funding source to cover the difference. Some ideas for the funding sources that, might be proposed would be a allocation from the general fund balance, or it could potentially be reallocation of maybe fourth issuance funds, in the transportation portion of the bonds. So those are just sort of the impact on the general capital fund. And if we go on to the next slide, this is the same information for the water sewer portion of the project. And you can see here, $57,980 that's projected to be needed in additional allocation for the water sewer portion of the project. So the total here is $306,000 for the project as a whole. And again, until the bids are received, we don't know, and we would look to fund this amount similarly by allocating retained earnings from the water sewer fund, or by shifting some bond proceeds, that are planned for future issuances. So that is just the financial portion, and I'll bring Doug up here to.
Thank you, Nicole.
So where we are today, the survey's been complete, layout's complete, and it's been reviewed with town staff. We've just about wrapped up putting all the final grading in, getting the bid documents together. Our plan, and Kevin has the advertisement, it's ready to go to the newspaper, to be in the newspaper next week. And we're ready to go out to bid with that project, with streetscape and water and sewer. The current budget for the streetscape, and this is total budget, is $1,010,672. The water and that's from Valley Boulevard to Main Street. This isn't a fancy colored version, but this is the version. If anybody wanted to see, it's kind of the final layout, if there's any specific questions. We've got water and sewer done as well. That's under permitting. The permit's been sent to the state several weeks ago. We have the sewer permit back. We don't have the water permit back yet. Those are all that's also going to be ready to go out to bid next week. The original project included water and sewer from Ransom to Main Street because that's where the water and sewer is now. There's actually no current water and sewer that runs linearly along Sunset from Valley Boulevard to Ransom Street. We have included that in the bid package so we can take those bids as alternates in case we want to do that as part of this project. And the budget for the base bid, which is from Ransom to Main Street, is $550,000. So one of the things that has come up is the issue of the underground utilities. Back in 2015, I think we presented in 2016, McGill prepared a study for Main Street and Sunset. I was going to say everybody remembers that. Maybe everybody doesn't remember that. Some people may have had sticker shock and just forgot about it. But this slide that you see here came from that presentation. None of this is new. The map's the same, the dollar amounts were the same, and at that time, we had said that to put the overhead utilities, that included power, telephone, cable TV, to put all that underground is $6.5 million. That was the total project. That was separate from the 10+ million it was going to cost to do Main Street from about Chestnut down to Hill Street. So when we started talking about the streetscape go ahead to the next one. When we started talking about the streetscape on Sunset and what can we do, this map's hard to see. You have to look close, but you can see when we did the study, we did a preliminary layout for all the utilities. You can't see, we put the aerial photos so you can tell where you're at. Now you can't see all the lines, but it has all the telephone lines, all the power lines, everything that's in there. We have a rough routing where all that stuff goes. So when that study was done the first time, that was the first step to having that ready to go. So the next step is to take that on to having design drawings that we can use as bid documents. Go to the next one. That's another section that's down in front of the First Baptist Church. So go to the next slide. So when we talked about it back in July, we talked about doing the conduits. Now, if you look at this in pieces, there's a couple of different pieces. When you convert utilities underground, you have to get rid of the wires along the street, but there is also some work that has to be done at the customer side because everything that's overhead on the street generally is overhead to the customer in most circumstances. So there's some work that has to be done on their side. So the question came, well, what would it cost not to do $6.5 million now, but to do just the conduits on Sunset Street, so that the conduits are under the street, sidewalk, transformer locations, everything's picked out along that route. So we went back through the cost numbers and segregated out those pieces that would go within the street corridor from back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk. And the estimate for that was $1,550,000. And that included $50,000 to do the final design to create bid documents for all that work if it went into the streetscape project.
Does that include Ransom to Valley Boulevard?
Yes. Yes, that's from Valley Boulevard to Main. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen in there. Brimco, local, they're very good to work with. They're generally not a problem. And we've met with all the utilities, but when it gets to AT&T particularly, but Spectrum as well, you're kind of subject to what you can get out of them in the time you can get it out of it. But if we made a shift now to include this in the project schedule, it would extend our schedule a little bit. So let's look at the next slide. It's got the project schedule we're on now. This is what we're proceeding with now. Bid advertisement would be in the newspaper next Wednesday. We would have a bid opening on January 17th to try to have that ahead of the council retreat so that If the council wanted to discuss that at the retreat, they would be able to. And we would have, we could do a bid award at the February council meeting and begin construction sometime in March to try to construct that during the construction window of 2019 calendar year. If we want to go back and add the conduits to the project right now, we're going to bump that out about a month. And really, I'm targeted having those dates tied to the council meeting. So if you look at council meeting award on March 12th, you'd back that up about a week and a half to have bids on the 28th of February, and we'd advertise about the 30th of January. So really, we're bumping it out a month in the end if we want to go back to that at this point. So that's a lot of information, not too complicated, hopefully, and we want to go through it quick, so I'll answer any questions now.
Did you say that you had, it already figured in to extend water and sewer, from Ransom on over to Valley Boulevard?
Yes, it's in the design, it's in the plans, we're gonna have a price bid for it.
Is that in the one, is that in your 550,000?
No, it's not.
It's not in there.
Where will it go? Is it go dead in there or what?
Right now, well, I shouldn't say right now. What happened, if we go back before Valley Boulevard was widened, the water line fed fed Sunset from Ransom to Main. Those were tied together. And there's no water line between Ransom and Valley Boulevard. In fact, there wasn't a water line that ran all the way along Valley Boulevard until the road was redone, and we built a new 12-inch water line all the way through. So, and there's pressure reducing valves in a lot of different areas to connect different things. There's one at across from Liz Claiborne that serves an area. There's one on both ends of Ransom Street that serve areas. There's both ends of Green Street that serve different areas. And originally, the line on Valley Boulevard was going to be higher pressure than the line on Ransom. We wouldn't have tied them together because it'd be useless. But now, the way the system's aligned up now, that section of Valley Boulevard is the same pressure zone, basically, so we can tie those two together and loop them if we want to, depending on how the bids come back in.
What's the advantage to going from Ransom to Valley Boulevard?
There are parcels on that stretch that do not front on the water line right now, particularly the pharmacy parcel. They're served around the back of the lot where the restaurant is on the corner. And there's no fire hydrants in between there either.
If this took place, have you all considered, I know this came up many years ago, running the conduit up to where DOT hopefully would be amenable to helping us put crosswalk signage and overhead lightage on Sunset and Main? Has that been considered?
We haven't looked at any particular spot in detail trying to find. The one thing you run into with the power lines is there's some main feeds on Main Street that make loops are a little different with electric than water, but they feed from two directions. So the main feed through Main Street, you can't take a piece out very well, like you could some pieces on Ransom Street maybe.
But it could be doable.
It's possible.
Anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
If you got the
Get the
dough,
money.
if you got the dough.
Nicole, I got a question for you.
Can I go?
TDA, any funds available from TDA that could be redirected to this project?
The TDA contributes a third of occupancy tax towards infrastructure. There is a current budget for those funds. However, it's something that would need to be considered between the town board and the TDA board to look at, what would be available there. Maybe talk about it
won't be in the millions.
No.
If, while you're answering, Nicole, I've got, what's the fund balance now, percentage of what we try and keep? You know, we try and keep 50, what is it now? And what would it drop to, if this was funded?
I would say if you could let me work on that, we're just now, you know, our audit is in draft form, it hasn't really been accepted, so the financial information within it is not really yet released, so I feel like it's probably something we're very close to, but I should probably refer back to that to give you the most current information, because there's been a year's time in between last year's audit report and this year's audit report, so I want to give you the most recent information.
When does the local government commission look at, we're gonna borrow this kind of money? You think it, obviously it's gonna reduce the fund balance.
If we make allocations from the fund balance, it would reduce fund balance, yes.
They do get involved, do they not?
Not with allocations of fund balance. Now, if we, yes.
You point installment purchase, if you
Yes.
decide to do an installment purchase, they will definitely be getting involved in it, which is another way of financing it.
Well, I mean, can you project any, if we did this, can you project a problem? They are sticklers, as you know.
I don't project a problem, but it goes before the local government commission board to approve the financing. So they look at our entire financial condition, you know, before they would approve the project as the local government commission.
And you said this would be $1.5 million to just put in the duck banks. And we'd need another $5 million to take the lines down.
Based on the first estimate.
Blue Ridge quoted me $750,000 to run the wiring and the transformers about 3-4 months ago. That was a verbal, of course, but they said $750,000 to run the electrical. Of course, that would not include Spectrum or AT&T.
And then we don't know, of course, what the individual property owners would have to pay to get the lines under their property, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, I believe
A lot of it's on them.
the original number of the 6.5 million included getting it to where the meter base is. I think some of those change meter bases, and every one across town's different. I'm trying to think, like on the back of the Martin House, there's like a big meter bank that's got 6 or 8 meters in it. And you about have to change that whole thing to make it different. So invariably, there's gonna be some work on the customer side, no matter how you do it, probably. But we tried to include most of that in that 6.5 million number.
Yeah, we wouldn't include what the property owner would pay to change the meter in that number. We're not paying on the property owner's meter.
Generally, the meter belongs to the electric company. So the electric company, you know, basically that number, the $6.5 million number takes care of everything on the utility side. Now, you know, if the power company or the cable company or the telephone company cover part of that cost, obviously that brings all that cost down.
I'm talking about I don't think the property owners are aware of what they will have to pay to get from their property there.
I
How
don't
many
think they are
thousands of
either,
dollars?
Bill.
Well, I know they're not, because I'm one of the property owners, and I wouldn't have the foggiest idea how much it's gonna cost to go from the street to my house.
This is separate from what the
What
town
happened
is
to
paying.
foggiest?
This is not what we're budgeting, because the town is not paying for a gym to connect.
Different communities do it in different ways. Some
You didn't
communities,
figure that, though.
that's in the 6.5 million.
You figured that the town would pay from the property's owner to the town?
We
the street
figured
to
the
their
cost,
Yeah.
to get the service to the point of delivery.
Yeah, to the
Now,
house.
here's a good point. Now, think about this for a minute. You get new service, okay? Blue Ridge will run your service 200 feet at no charge if you're getting new service. How they're gonna go about this, I don't know. But if you do new service, they run it up to 200 feet in the ground.
We're not talking about new.
I know, exactly. I don't know
But,
how
but
they're
it's a
gonna-
comparable kind of scenario, where the cost that we looked at, including in that $6.5 million, was to get it to the meter, however it gets to the meter.
Well, I had lunch with Rob Dyer today. He had no idea that he would have to pay anything. So that's where I think we are. These people aren't aware of what might be coming down the road.
In most circumstances, the service delivery will go back generally where it's at. There will be some circumstances, I'm not sure, and there's a lot of them, so I can't remember off the top of my head. There are a few, I remember on Main Street, that are fed from the front that wouldn't be fed from the front anymore. Those would have some significant changes. Typically, the ones on Sunset are not quite that way.
Mine are fed from the rear right now. The line goes from the front to the back and then to the rear of the house.
But in that circumstance, it would probably end up being buried from the front around
Front,
to the
back,
back.
yeah. Yeah, before we even get that far, I'd like to have some clarification on the first presentation. I got here, we've got to have a potential shortfall of 300,000. What phase is that shortfall in? Is that first, second, or third? Have we borrowed yet on the third phase?
No, that borrowing will happen, be funded in April.
In April? Do your figures address April?
Yes. they
And the
do.
streets, and the sewer, and the water, and the ditches, and everything else?
They do. This column here that says bond allocations
Yes.
for planning, that's the third phase that has not.
How much is, help me on the reading, how much is that?
705,000.
705,000.
705, that's for the phase 3.
Phase 3, and this is the
That's,
streetscape portion,
Right.
not the water sewer portion.
Okay, just the street, you're just talking about street gate.
That's what this shows, yes.
Okay, it says 700,000. Are we short on 2 at all? Phase 2, are we short on the allocation?
No,
No, we're all right.
we're not currently
Okay.
short because you can
So the so 248,000 is what you think we might be short on phase 3,
See how much you put there.
as a project,
as it stands right now.
yes.
And the question is, for me, is where do we get the 248,000, 250,000 bucks?
Right.
Because so far, I haven't seen too many things come in under budget, so far.
And I don't remember
Anytime-
us being short in July. Do you remember the shortfall being projected when we went through all the same stuff in July?
No, I don't remember
I think we did talk about it.
I don't remember.
Not
But,
This doesn't include the conduits. That's a whole different,
Right.
but
conduits are a whole nother $550,000.
I guess if we're $248,000, potentially, sure. I'm wondering, why are we talking about spending more money that wasn't even in the bond issue? Because this burying the lines on Sunset wasn't in the bond issue. So until your audit's done, and we know what that number is going to be, and until we get the bids in for phase 3, I think we would be crazy.
Well, and there's $52,000 deficit in the water and sewer.
Yeah, I know.
So you're up to
We're up to,
305.
yeah, $306,000. Until we know exactly how much we're gonna be short, because we're gonna have to make that up. We're gonna have to either rob Peter to pay Paul for phase 3. So that means phase 4, okay, is gonna be short. So why in the world are we talking about this,
The reason it was brought to the table.
I understand the reason.
No, the reason it was brought to the table was because we had some citizens ask about it.
Well,
And we're
okay.
tearing up Sunset. It was an opportune
Well, I
time to
think-
look at it.
Well, and I
That's
think,
what we're talking about, is it not, tonight?
Yes.
Nothing.
We've already approved the other.
I mean,
It's
maybe
done.
I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor, but correct me if I am. I thought we were here tonight to discuss, did we want to fund $50,000 to have Doug Firm do an engineering study?
The study's been done, has it not, Doug?
We do the design and bid.
This is
on it.
design.
Design.
Well, why would you want to spend $50,000 if you didn't intend to do it?
That's correct.
And that's, Albert's got a good point. That's why it's been brought
Well,
up.
and not only that, what I'm thinking about is that somewhere down the pike, whenever all this is done, how do we know if there are gonna be any telephone lines anyhow? I mean, we know there's gonna be electrical something. I mean, I think we're pretty sure of that. But how do we know what communication is gonna be like in
well,
this town?
I don't think there's
Right
anybody
now,
on this
a lot of
board
people are,
that wouldn't like to see buried lines. However, when we looked at the budget and looked at the bond, we went over the needs, and we considered that a want. And we were already
Exactly.
committing citizens to, in 10 years, a 10-cent increase without the conduit and without the the underground utilities. So I think we made the decision back when we started this, and when we presented it to the residents, they bought into, we needed roads, we needed Parks and Rec, we needed ditches fixed. But not because the cost was so exorbitant, that I think we made the decision then, and you just weren't on the board then. But I think it's fine to bring it up. And
I
I know
attended the
personally,
well, I was on the board when we did the 6 million deal.
yeah,
I remember that deal. I mean, when it was done in 3 different kinds of segments. I remember that.
Well,
But-
and
but
I
I
was
just-
here in July, and we decided we weren't gonna do this. We had the same discussion. And we decided not to do it. So I guess we need to see if anyone has changed their minds, and if we need to fund the new engineering report. I'm not in favor of it.
Well, do we have a motion?
We have a
I
motion.
have a motion, we don't.
Doug making a motion?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
No, yeah, I make a motion
I make a
that we don't
motion that we
fund
don't,
the
we don't.
the engineering drawings
do we have a
at this
second?
stage of the game.
Second?
second, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So motion passes. Thank you, Doug.
You're gonna, I guess, when will we get that report from you, Nicole, about these shortfalls and stuff like that? Will we have them by January?
When the bids are received.
And when are those bids due? Before the third week in January? Good,
Our plan is to have them before the retreat.
good, all right,
We should have our audit.
good. Good.
And currently, we're waiting on the audit because of the ABC board situation. So as soon as that's completed, we'll have, the audit be complete, not correct? Okay, thank you.
No, I got all three.
All right, moving forward. Okay, old business speakers from the floor.
So I think the change in that was that for the speakers to speak to any item on the agenda, because we do have it at the front of the meeting now. Is that correct?
Yes,
that
it
they
is.
can speak to
We
any
originally moved it to the front of the meeting. That's
Right.
correct.
And now it's just to clarify that the public can speak to any item on the agenda. Now, for the public hearing part, they would speak to that item during the public hearing, if there was a public hearing, right?
And that's correct. And also, the consent agenda will not be, you could not speak on that either. Under the current programs,
Well, we
they're in
can't even
place.
speak on it. So, yeah,
Yeah, you have to know that under that situation, a council person cannot engage at all in the conversation when anybody speaks.
Right, and
You
who-
can't have any back and forth. They can speak, period. But we cannot give our opinion on anything at all during that conversation,
and who's timing these 3 minutes?
Me?
Mayor.
okay?
Okay,
So-
and you'll clarify at every meeting, because a lot of people don't come to every meeting, how the procedure goes if we decide to do this. Right?
And then if anything on the agenda, right, if it's, what's this?
Public hearing.
Public hearing, then they have to be sworn in
Well, they would only speak at the time that the public hearing,
on
which is
that
what
particular, at a public
Virginia
hearing.
said.
The
Right.
only time you have to be sworn in,
Some of these-
public hearing.
Some of these public hearings are quasi judicial proceedings, some of them are just public hearings where people don't have to be sworn, but I think the idea is that if it's a public hearing, whatever type of public hearing it may be, those folks need to wait until the public hearing.
Wait until it is. Okay,
And have to be sworn.
if it's
It depends if it's
quasi-judicial.
quasi,
They may or may not have to be sworn depending on the type of public hearing.
Depending upon- yeah. Okay, I got it.
Alan, what's your take on this? Just from the many years you've been involved by changing this, if I may ask your opinion?
Well, it's the same take I had last month, which is that I think it's a bad idea.
And why is that, if I may ask?
Because I think that what you're potentially doing is creating something like a public hearing. If you're addressing agenda items before it comes up on the agenda, I just think that it has the potential of creating, some difficult situations. And I think it's contrary to the way most public bodies operate, at least in my experience. I'm not in favor of it, but I can't tell you that it's illegal. You can do this if you choose to do this.
Doug and Jim, what did y'all find out? Because we asked y'all to see what,
Yeah,
what
that's a
the
good
league
question.
had to say.
Most of the, I talked to about 4 people there, other council people and also some town managers. And I would say that most of them said, yeah, it's not a big deal. They would say, let them speak. He said there are the risks that you run, the sessions become elongated. Everybody wants to add something to what's already been said. So your council meetings can get longer. But on the other hand, it gives the people an opportunity to address the issues they want. And I can see both sides of it. I personally think I would give that, he who giveth can also taketh away. So that if we giveth and try it, and we don't like it, we can go back.
Mr.
So,
Freeman.
Because it's just like that. It doesn't have to be, all it takes is 5 votes to say it's over. We're not doing this anymore. 3 votes.
Mr. Freeman.
It's over.
Mr. Freeman, you've been in this industry for many years. What's your take on this?
Thank you. Again, I'll just give you the opinion. I just finished up with Claremont, and this was a discussion in Claremont at an interim. And if at the beginning of the meeting, they don't allow it, that was discussed. If it's an agenda item, they say that to the people that unless it's a public hearing type situation, you can speak to anything you want, but if it's agenda item and that, sorry. The other communities I've been working with over the experience, and I'm going to talk to Smithfield, Riverbend, Havelock, Wellworth, they don't do that either. They basically do what you're doing here now, which is they don't allow them to speak on an agenda item. Now, as for transparency, they also were saying that you put that out there on the agenda before the meeting, and if people see there's a concern with that, yes, we understand they go to a council member that says, there's a concern here, and the council member may voice their concerns. There's nothing wrong with that. But my past experience, not all, but in majority, they don't allow that. They look at that, we got to the point that this is kind of a business. Yes, we need the public input, but you need time to actually do the business on the information that you have. If you don't feel you have the information at that, then maybe you need to table the issue and then get out of the public and open it up to a public hearing. But I'm with your attorney on this one. That's just I will add one little caveat here, and again, I'm just part-time here. You let it go. I'm just saying one ear out the other. I really think this issue as you recruit, and this is just my opinion, if you want to do this, and if you really want to do this, I hate to say this, but it's almost like kicking the can down the road for the time being, and I'll tell you why. I think you're in the recruitment process right now for a manager. And I think as you saw before some of your presentation, your last meeting and that, good managers, they're going to research this. They're going to research how they deal with council. And with most communities that don't do this, the manager will see that, or if you're doing it, they're going to say, well, that's something new that I have not experienced before. So is that a plus or a minus? I don't know, but it probably makes more sense if you're going to go ahead and do this as you involve your new manager at the particular time and say, let's do it. And what are we talking, a few months, hopefully? So again, that's just my take on it and what I've seen in past experience.
Thank you, Mr. Freed.
I'll add that with the ones that I talked with down there, and I talked to, our meeting was so packed that I got to talk to 4 or 5, and that was about it. It was fairly split. Most of them had said that they had opened it up, the agenda up, to anything except for anything that was on a public hearing. 2 of them said that they had, and they personally didn't like it, and they were thinking about changing back. We got into a little bit of a discussion, and a lot of I brought up what my concerns were, and we talked about that. To me, if something is brought up on the floor and it's something dear to somebody on the council, then they may spend the rest of their time before waiting for that to be brought up, thinking about how to interact or interject with what was said back at the beginning of the meeting. And a lot of times they lose what's been said in between. And they agreed that that was a concern that they had and something they were seeing. But that's my opinion.
Albert?
Well, I went down to Hickory and met with the clerk down there for the city of Hickory, Debbie Miller. And she did a pretty involved search of the Hickory City Code back to 1981. And her statement is there is no indication of censorship of the subject matter in the code. Now, she also said something that was sort of funny to me. In other words, they let people speak to what they want to without, except the sworn situation. She says a lot of people come in and just go up there and stand for 3 minutes and don't say anything. And some of the council wanted to put a stop to that, and Hickory's staff attorney said, no, that was their statement. I thought it was strange, but that's Hickory, if you've ever lived.
So Hickory allows it?
They do allow it.
Motion?
I'd like a motion to allow the public to speak to us on anything that's on the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
Please.
I mean, we already have it at the beginning of the meeting, but to tweak it so they can speak to any item that's on the agenda.
Unless it's a
Unless it's a public hearing.
Unless consent.
Or consent, so, yes. So now they can't speak to items on the agenda. I'd like to change that where they can speak to items on the agenda.
I
Do
second.
you have a second?
I second.
Do any further discussion on this matter?
I just want to say, I think Jim's statement says a mouthful. What was that epistle you said?
I mean, he who giveth can take it away.
You remember?
Yeah.
That's a mouthful to me. We have the right to do away with it if we don't like it.
Yeah, but okay.
All right,
The only
we have-
other thing I would say is I think that our interim manager makes a good point. That maybe we shouldn't do this until after we've hired somebody. But, I mean, I wouldn't like anything to be negative, but maybe we should wait. Another couple of months may not make a big difference. It is winter time, and we get most of our people who want to attend these meetings coming in the late spring and summer.
Or we could try it until then.
Well, that's another thing I would say, that if you wanted, maybe, if you wanted to put a sunset on it, I would be receptive to something like that, but there's that element of, I wouldn't want anything to be a negative in our hiring process. So otherwise, I think I don't see anything wrong with quite frankly trying it. But I'm very cognizant of what could happen. But I also don't want to keep things from being tried. So that's how I feel about it.
Call the question.
Okay. Now, if you want to go with the sunset clause, you've got to amend your motions. So, we have a motion, we have a second. If you want to add the sunset clause, you have to amend your motion stating such as. Thoughts?
I think we have the sunset. Last meeting, I said I would not consider this if we didn't have a sunset. But in actuality, the sunset clause lives and dies every time we meet.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
And I'm
That's
just
true.
making mention that if you put that in there, it's got to be in the motion. Okay,
I
all
didn't
right.
put that in
So
there.
we have a first, we have a second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Motion passes. All right, moving forward. All right. New business. We're going to start off with, would you like to start off with the bicycle,
No, we
2000?
can do the retreat.
You want to do the retreat first?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do the retreat first. All right, date and location request. You all have that information in front of you? Mr. Freeman, you want to take this? Or would you like me to do it?
What's the date?
I'm trying, no, I trying to coordinate
When's the date?
here. Let me see.
Well, in the past, it's been Martin Luther King weekend. I think we ought to consider moving it, changing it.
Well, I do two, maybe next year, but I've already asked off.
Well, take a vacation
Because I
day.
think when we first did this, the employees didn't have off until about 3 years ago, is that right? Yeah. But I think it's great to move it. I just think right now, we're sort of in the tune to have it on the Martin Luther King, but I am all for changing it for next year, allowing the employees to,
It is next year.
2020. The only way I could do it is if I had it before Martin Luther King.
Before, which would probably be good.
It'd have to be the first week in January.
Why?
We wouldn't have that information either.
No, we wouldn't have the, no, why would it have to be the first week?
Well, because I have mandatory meetings starting on the 8th. So I could do it anytime before
I
that.
think we need to keep it the way it is.
First week. All the stuff won't be ready.
You know,
So maybe we look at it in 2020 to move it, to allow the employees not to be so stressed and have the day off.
Also,
So
keep
keep
in
it-
mind, when
so
we're,
we keep it
when we're keeping
Martin.
those, when we're bringing those employees that working, we're paying you all what? For
Their
vacation
salary,
day?
the department has their salary, I hate to tell you. So they, they lose.
Do they get compensatory time or you get extra time? Do you know?
Well, generally, we have been able to take a different day.
I was gonna say, you usually can get an extra day or two off sometime during the year. If you want it, don't you? To make up for it? Yeah.
Depends
Well,
on the manager.
Our new manager isn't gonna take that away.
Well, yeah, I mean, I
It's
think,
gonna be all right.
At ASU, you work on a holiday, a designated holiday, you get double time.
yeah, but these are department heads.
That's
They still get
ASU.
double
Those
time.
are,
I don't, in
You're
mine,
not a department head.
That's ASU.
but even mandatory,
what do they call those, non-exempt
I don't know, we don't get
or
it.
exempt employees?
That's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
Now, Hillary, though, is not a town clerk.
Okay,
So she does get, comp time.
Hillary does.
Triple time.
Yeah, Hillary does.
she
You get-
deserves
You get double or triple.
to deal with us for 3 days.
Triple.
Okay, so
So what are we looking at?
So when's the dates?
Changed
we're gonna keep the, I guess, gonna keep the dates, do we need
Does
a
anybody
motion?
know when those are?
You need a
It's,
motion for that, Alan?
It's January 20th,
If we do, do we?
21st, and 22nd.
Is that a Sunday?
It's a Sunday,
Monday and Tuesday?
correct,
Okay, so
Sunday,
we're gonna
Monday,
keep,
and Tuesday.
keep the
20th
date the
is a
same
Sunday,
This year.
correct.
this year.
Thank you.
No, next year.
Well, no.
Sunday and Tuesday.
Okay, keep the date the same.
Okay.
All right? Now, where would you like to have it?
I
I'd
like
like to
to
have it in Baldwin.
I like to
where?
have it in
In
Asheville.
Baldwin,
Oh,
I like to have it in Nashville.
Nashville.
Asheville,
Asheville.
not Nashville. Where we've always
It's
had
my
it.
ear side, it's not good.
Where we've always had it.
So
I'd like to have that.
Did you get the dates?
we'll do a half day on Sunday, full day Monday, half day Tuesday, like we
If
did
we can
last
get
year.
That's
it
what
all
we've done.
done.
Yeah,
If we can get it all done.
Did you hear
Otherwise,
that,
we'll
Jim?
have, otherwise we'll have to leave Tuesday afternoon.
okay.
Okay? Where do we? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've had a lot of people come to me and they said, we'd like to see it kept somewhere close to Blowing Rock.
Mr.
We've had that
Freeman,
every year.
I know,
Did you
well,
get
I've
those-
heard it again,
that we do
Jim,
a
thank you.
half a day
Me
on
too.
Sunday?
And
Half day
so-
Sunday, full day Monday, and try to get it done on Tuesday.
So we could, we could entertain something like one of our local businesses that has the facilities in the restaurant like Chatola or Blue Ridge Mountain Club or something like that. There'd be,
Well, don't have it at Blue Ridge Mountain Club in case we have another snowstorm.
well, that's okay, we'll fly in by helicopter. Okay? But, I mean, it's just a thought. I mean,
Yeah.
just keep the,
Well, can we,
if that's what you also choose, so.
do you feel comfortable letting staff look at different places in town? Although I don't really want Blue Ridge Mountain Club, but
I don't-
local,
What I need staff.
we got
to do
Green
here-
Park Inn.
Yeah, that's an option. Green Park Inn? Yep. Yep.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
I don't understand why I need staff to tell me how to make this decision.
Well, you could have it at, Community Club
We could have it
and just cater the food in.
in a helicopter and fly over everywhere.
With Fire Blue Ridge.
Is Legion booked?
I think we
Okay, I
probably
think-
need to get a vote on this.
Let's
first
determine
before
where
we-
you want it.
Yeah.
Okay, determine where you want it, and then everything else is easy, okay? All right, where do you want, come up with a,
Hold the board.
Okay, poll them.
where do you want it, Virginia?
Blowing Rock.
Doug?
Ashland.
Lone Rock,
Asheville.
Asheville.
Okay, Asheville it is.
Okay, stays in Asheville. All righty, moving forward here.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
just clarification, you all submitted your topics to, I believe, Hillary for the retreat. If it's all right with you, we'll take a look at them, see what we can group and pattern, and get you back a draft agenda prior to it to see if it's in order how we present it.
Great.
Okay?
I gave you
Yeah,
mine,
yes,
Mr. Freeman.
All right. Moving forward, guys. Let's see here. This was moved from consent agenda, the 2019 Cycle North Carolina Mountains to the Coast Ride. Is Tracy Brown here? Mr. Brown, how are you this evening, sir? I think Ms. Sweeting and a few others had some questions for you. Sue?
First, I didn't notice there was a staff recommendation. Is staff going to be involved in this?
Yes,
Our staff?
yes.
Okay, they didn't give a recommendation according to the,
I think it got cut off, didn't it?
well, I don't know.
We had one from North Carolina.
On page 21, it says staff recommendation, and I don't see it. So,
That form may not have been completed, and that, I think that when we submitted it, we had talked with police and fire and Parks and Rec, the school. Everybody's in favor of it, and that's the reason we submitted it.
so
Otherwise, we
when
might
I
have-
read the information, is camping involved?
Yes,
Didn't they do this at the school a few years back?
yes,
Well,
09,
It was a wonderful event. They camped out, well, they actually got rained out.
that's right.
They were supposed to camp out on the playground at the school. You wouldn't believe the equipment they come with. And they ended up sleeping in the gym. Some of us that were on the PTO or parents, we helped them.
Right.
And they had, I don't know that year how many people came. How long ago was that?
It was in 09,
2009.
and they've wanted to come back ever since. They like to move it around, but we showed them fantastic hospitality here at the time. And Kent can speak to this, as can Aaron and others. We had torrential rains, and our main camping was going to be at the school. Considering we were going to have about a 3-inch rainfall, it was awful. JB came in and he talked to Scott Hildebrand and said, open up every building we have. Talked to Kent, at the time the police chief, and said, do what you can to make them comfortable. So we put them everywhere we could. We put them in the gym at the school, put them at the Legion, we put them in the community club, and we put round-the-clock fire protection there. I was a fireman at the time. I was much younger. And we stayed up with them all night to make sure there was no, that's enough, that there'd be no issue. And they loved it. They really walked away loving Blowing Rock and have wanted to come back ever since. We've just not been able to host because of scheduling. We couldn't put things on top of stuff, you know.
Could they, or is it too soon, like we voted in first and then you decide about, wonder why they weren't gonna stay over at Devant Field?
That's where we're going this year, if
Okay.
you all approve.
Okay.
We went with Parks and Rec, and they did a site visit a few weeks ago, the day before I submitted that paperwork.
Okay,
And we went to all the different locations, and Devant Field's where we'd like to do it, the camping, main camping. Most of the activities would happen there. We'd have one rider meeting in the park, in the gazebo, and then they'd be out of here Sunday morning by 10 a.m. Everything would be gone.
So they come the 27th to the 30th?
No, I don't know where that 30th came from. They'd come the 27th, and they would be out of here on the, I'm sorry, you're right, the 30th.
I think it's the 28th.
Yeah.
That's exactly right, yes.
There was a typo in the paperwork. It called the first day.
I saw on the agenda, it
It
didn't
said the
look right. but
27th.
Yeah, it must.
Friday, the
28th.
equipment comes in. On the Friday, the 27th, the equipment comes in.
Okay.
And the organizers from CNC, and then Cycle North Carolina. Saturday, the motor coaches come in with the riders and all of their equipment. And then Sunday, they're out of here.
So it must be Friday the 28th. if they leave Sunday the 30th?
What I have written here is Friday the 27th, Saturday the,
So,
you're right. The typo's in the
It's in the
CNC
Friday.
piece. Yeah, Friday is when the equipment shows up, all the riders come in from 2 different parts of the state. They'll have motor coaches leaving from Raleigh and motor coaches leaving from Wilmington to bring about 250 per load.
What's your expectation for the town's part in this?
Our expectation for the town, well, the economic impact should be in the tune of.
No, I mean, what do we have to do? I've read that.
Oh, okay.
I understand that.
We're going to have to provide good hospitality,
So the
and
meals?
the meals,
catered, aren't they?
beg
Bubba
pardon?
Joe or some Joe, Bubba?
But
there's they'll have it catered, a couple of meals, and they'll use local restaurants for that. What we'll have to do from a hospitality standpoint is make sure that we get them a listing of hotels and availability, the different restaurants and stuff we do already. We'd set up a welcome tent when they get here and be able to provide information and directions and that kind of thing. Cobb Milner over at Bistro Roca will, along with Rhodey Bicycles, do an offshoot ride that weekend when they get here. So they'll literally start coming in Saturday, and they'll probably take a 50 to 75-mile ride that day. A bunch of them will. And that'll introduce them to the Parkway, to 221, to our area. Police will have to be available to block some intersections as they're leaving town, or just keep an eye out. They don't leave in a big group at one time. It just eases out, so their involvement in terms of the police will be very limited. Kent and I have talked about the medical needs that they may need or may have, and they'll just be on standby in case there's something that happens. Our EMTs or paramedics can be there. And they've all participated in the past. It's been a very positive experience.
Jennifer, is your recommendation we approve this? Because it was, okay.
Well, I think it's one of our best kept secrets, and it shouldn't be a best kept secret. Because I hope everybody will come up here and look at all this. You don't have it, you won't get it if you don't come and look. This is almost as big a deal as the balloon festival in Albuquerque. Really, look at it.
Well, what do you think?
Look.
Do our people clean up? Are they gonna pitch tents and all that stuff?
They have a portage company that they hire, so if you and I were to take the ride, which you're welcome to do if you like,
Thank you.
they will, if you can do this if you like, you rent a tent and Bubba's Camping.
That was it, Bubba's.
Yeah.
I remember that.
They
from
set up
2009.
the little villages, and they would do that at Devant Field.
Well, I'm just saying Sunday, somebody's gotta,
They'll tear all that down, and then we will hire either Boy Scouts or maybe somebody with a PTO to help us clean all that up. But it's amazing how clean this group actually is.
I'm sure they
Yeah.
are, but it's still gotta be
Oh, yeah.
cleaned up. And I
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
know whether our people from Public Works had to do that or
No.
help. or-
What we'll do is, to spread the love, so to speak, is hire some folks
Well,
to help
the
us.
garbage truck's usually running on Sunday that day anyway, during the summer, so all they'll have to do is just swing by the ball field and pick the
Okay.
garbage up.
They do that in September? Was it September?
Well, I move
I
we
do-
approve it.
Early September.
We have a motion to approve it. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you very much.
Come and look.
All right, moving forward, we have department reports. Mr. Freeman?
Thank you very much. I believe Nicole had something that you wanted to pass on.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Well, I was asked by Commissioner Steele just to give council sort of just brief information about the TDA audit. They recently had their audit complete and presented at their last retreat meeting, and just briefly, I'll touch on, they had a clean opinion. And a healthy fund balance, healthy unrestricted fund balance was reported totaling $556,139. And that put them roughly at 57% of expenditures. They did have an increase in fund balance this year of $14,837. They had budgeted actually to allocate some of their fund balance, but didn't have to do that and actually contributed to fund balance. And as a note, there was a restatement necessary in the audit due to the GASB Statement 75, which is the OPEB reporting. The Local Government Commission required the TDAs to, roll that back and restate their net position. So that restatement decreased the TDA's net position by $33,182 to record that liability. And that is all that I have on it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions you have in any of the other departments at this time? If not, I would like to just let you know that before I leave tomorrow, to give you a heads up, you will be receiving a general information packet from me. We go a little bit more detail and copies attached to it. We did receive a notice of violation on our wastewater treatment plant from an inspection that happened on November the 20th on there, and we were working to try to address those issues. We also let you know that we were doing a survey now. We had some minor, even though we did great, and as you all said to your staff, we had some minor damages in regards to some of the town's property from this last storm event, and we're filing a Coles funding claim now, and generally just some minor stuff. We did have a police vehicle damage, about $1,900 claim, and a few other things, so we're surveying that right now. We also have, I have been contacted in regards of a water pressure issue. I think I talked with the mayor and told him we're looking into that. And
What is the status of that, Mr. Freeman?
well, I've got it out, and I've been so busy. I just first saw the details and talked to the gentleman this week when I came in on Tuesday.
Is Matt still here?
There's Matt. Yeah, he's here. Matt, in regards to we forwarded you the information on the water pressure from the
Right.
past experience. Update on that, background?
I know at one point we had issues, there with fire flow, and it started, that's kind of where it started. Did some work with PRV, ended up finding a valve that was off in the system, nobody knew it was off. Long story short, installed a new PRV on Brooker Street. From that point forward, my understanding the pressure was pretty good. There was some fluctuation, but we didn't really have that much issue there. New line was installed from Joplin Parkway through the backside of Chatola. And I guess that's active now. If we ever, I'm assuming that's feeding the backside of Chatola.
It's all done and complete.
So it's all complete and feeding. That email that I saw was the first I knew of any additional pressure issues there. A lot of times when that area's having issues, we'll get it all over one side, a bunch of different calls, and I hadn't had any. So our guys are gonna go out, hopefully tomorrow, we'll be caught up enough with the snow, I can break some guys loose. We'll go out and start taking some static pressures on some hydrants. I'm gonna contact North Carolina Rural Water Association, they're gonna come in, they have data loggers that the temperature will stay up above freezing for us. We can get those on the hydrants, and that'll give us a set of data over however long we can keep them on. I'd love to keep them on for a week, but we'll do that as long as the weather is permitting and allow us to do that. That'll give us a set of data we can compare to what they're seeing on their gauges and go from there. And we'll obviously coordinate with Doug and see what the engineers think, and just kind of back into this and see what information we can get.
Thank you so much, because I noticed Kent Tarbutton was here. I don't know if he's still here or not, but,
I think he stepped out already.
okay. But,
Okay.
Great.
Well,
Thank
just
you.
want to give you a heads up on that. You'll get a lot more detail on that from me tomorrow.
Point of information for
Yes,
me.
sir.
When we declare a state of emergency
Yes, sir.
like that, is there a entity back in Raleigh or someplace that Do they have funds available to help us out
You know,
on
that has to be.
extra costs?
Yeah, usually what happens in that case, the state of North Carolina will issue a state of emergency on that, and then, of course, your localities will jump on board of that, and they have to tie that together, because if there is a decision from the federal government or from the state, like FEMA and matching,
Yeah.
you have to have it within that period of time. So at this point, I have not heard if there's gonna be available funds. But
Okay.
that's not unusual. They're still dealing with Hurricane
Yeah, I
Matthew
understand.
and the money in there, but at least with the state emergency and that, we've been coordinated with Talk County.
Well, I would think some of the
Back.
costs that we've incurred,
Yeah.
we want to keep track of.
Yeah, you keep track of, keep track of the receipts and things of that sort.
Well, I'm talking about labor costs
Do you
as
do
well.
that? Yes, yes.
And damaged vehicles,
Yes.
damaged buildings,
Yes.
stuff like that.
Yeah. And we
Okay,
think within
so
that
you,
period of time.
anyway, you're all over that, I'm sure.
We understand that.
Good.
I want to commend the manager.
Okay, Albert? Yes.
I do want to commend the interim manager for leaving by direction a person in charge, especially for this latest thing you're talking about, the state of emergency and all that. That is something we've sorely needed for years.
It's pretty basic. My wife liked me doing that because I would love to have been here. In all my experience, I'm always hunkered down with the town or in a EOC while she's fighting the storm or the event. And I have that nice air conditioner and the rest going, but, that's just standard operating procedures. Thank
Well,
you.
anyway, thanks.
Thank you.
Any other managerial issues? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second?
Meeting adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming out.